Mother-in-law wants my husband to get his stepsister pregnant. My mother-in-law wants my husband to impregnate his lesbian stepsister. Mother-in-law cannot accept that my husband and I are not having children. She is so obsessed with getting a grandchild that she has made very disgusting statements. I am extremely uncomfortable with her saying these things, especially in front of everybody. She has started whining about who is going to give her a grandchild. Keep in mind, husband is an only child, so this is like the third or fourth time she has brought up that my husband should provide sperm for his stepsister to have a baby. She literally says, get a turkey baster, and you two go in the bedroom. I don't know why she thinks this is appropriate to say. It's very awkward for me, my husband, his stepsister, and her partner. The stepsister doesn't want this to happen either. I just don't know what to say or do at this point. She brought this up repeatedly at Thanksgiving. How does she not realize that is weird? TLDR, mother-in-law wants to use a turkey baster filled with my husband's sperm so that he can get his stepsister pregnant. My mother just tried to climb in my house through a ground floor window. How do we escape her? A year ago, Mom came to visit on Mother's Day, and presented me with the key to her new house, which was a 5-minute drive from us. Her house before this was a 5-hour drive. I had no idea she was moving until that moment. We've neglected to set boundaries before now. The reason we struggle with boundaries is we've never really had to set them, as before this we only had dear husband's mother in our lives, and she was a just yes, very respectful, never overstepped, and constantly checked with us before doing anything. Mother-in-law passed away suddenly towards the end of my pregnancy, and my father passed away 6 months before my mother moved here. Because mother-in-law was so great with boundaries, we never had to set them. So once Mom moved here, we didn't really know how to tell my newly widowed mother that we needed space. However, over the year she's been nearby, things have escalated massively with my mom, and I've found myself having to tell her off more than once. Weird role reversal, due to how she's talked to Slash about dear daughter or dear husband. The other day my mom pierced my daughter's ears because dear daughter looks like a little boy, according to her, which she really doesn't. She just looks more like her father than me. So we were thinking about moving. We had numerous conversations about it with her, saying that we weren't going to change our daughter's appearance, and then we left Mom alone with our daughter for a few hours while we looked at a preschool, and she pierced dear daughter's ears. I kicked Mom out, and changed the locks so she couldn't get in. We took the piercings out, no east feet, as they were done with a piercing gun, and were therefore really tight, and the holes sealed overnight. Mom has come by the house multiple times since we kicked her out asking to see us, and we've ignored her. Then today I heard a car pull up, assumed it was her, and went back to doing laundry. Then I hear something fall, and dear daughter crying. I sprinted in the direction of the noise, and Mom had pulled the window open, and was trying to climb in. Room was ground floor facing the street. When I see her, she doesn't freeze or apologize or explain. She instead tells me that dear husband is keeping me, and dear daughter from her, and he's working against her. I yanked the window shut, and locked it, and called dear husband. I can't believe I was dumb enough to leave it unlocked. But never in my wildest dreams did I think my mother would try and clamber through a window into my living room. Dear husband has suggested moving. His job pays well, we have some savings, and the company he works for has enough branches throughout our country, and several other countries, that if we needed to move we could. And I was planning on transitioning back into the workplace this September, when dear daughter goes off to preschool. We've looked into options, and it's possible, and we could make it work. There are places we could go with more preschools, including ones with security, more job opportunities for me, and there are a few where there's a lower cost of living, and dear husband could earn more, and he says it can all be sorted with a transfer request, so long as there's a position available. Also, I have already called the non-emergency line, and have been told that 1, where we live piercing is an assault, and 2, restraining orders will have our home address on it. We think moving is the smart option. However, if she finds us, it's worthless. Does anyone have experience with getting far away from their toxic mother-in-law without being tracked down? Toxic mother-in-law gets her comeuppance. I've posted a bit about my toxic mother-in-law over the last couple of weeks, but for anyone unfamiliar, she was my lecturer when I was at university. Mother-in-law hated that I was dating her adopted son, biological nephew, since she found out about us. When we first told her we were dating, she tried to kill me via allergy, another story for another day. And after she found out I was pregnant, she stalked us, impersonated me, and broke into our flat. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. She made our lives hell, to the extent where we no longer felt safe in our own home, and my fiancé and I had to move across the country to escape her. We've been living in our new place for a little under a week. The baby is due in a couple of months, and everything is mostly ready. We've deactivated our social media, created new emails, and changed our numbers. Only a few friends and relatives from the town she lives in, which we left, have our new numbers. We had to leave our entire lives, and everyone we knew and loved behind, while I was 7 months pregnant, because we couldn't trust her around our baby. On Monday, an email was sent from the dean to mother-in-law's graduating students saying mother-in-law was being considered for a promotion, from lecturer to head of department, and they wanted to hear from her students first. The aim of this was to receive glowing recommendations to give to the board. This was not the result. As I changed my email, I hadn't seen this. One of my friends who had my new number, and was on the course with me, did see the email, and on Tuesday he gave my new number to the dean, saying that he would only give her the number in person, on paper, and only if she agreed to ring when she was alone, and throw out the paper, and erase it from the logs after. If she was calling from a university phone, then the number would go on the call logs that were accessible by all members of staff. But he assured her that this was something she'd want to hear before promoting mother-in-law. So I got this call from the dean on Tuesday. She told me what was going on. My friend hadn't had time to get in touch before she rang, and she asked me why my friend thought I should speak to her. I told her everything. I started 2 years ago, when I met mother-in-law's son, the man who would become my fiancé, and the father of my child. I told her about mother-in-law poisoning me via allergy after finding out about me, and her son, and the EpiPen incident. I told her about the outside-of-class harassment I received post-pregnancy announcement, impersonating me, crashing GP appointments, breaking in, etc. I told her about the in-class harassment, telling me to break up with my fiancé, stopping lectures until I left, throwing out my food and drink, trying to reschedule exams, and more. I told her about the last time I saw mother-in-law in person, when she tried to hit me while I was 7 months pregnant with her grandchild. I told her about having to move away. I was careful not to give a location or distance, and filing a restraining order to escape mother-in-law. I thought the uni were made aware of the row, but apparently not. Fiancé then arrived home from work, and when I told him what was happening, he was all too eager to chime in with stuff I forgot, copying keys, punching the landlord, canceling orders, going through our things. He also told the dean about the abuse he got from her growing up. We also gave the dean the names of people willing to support our story, as well as some dates, times, and locations of on-campus incidents. I'd made a note of a few of them, so she could pull CCTV from the campus security recordings. Fiancé also told her the story of one of his cousins, mother-in-law's bio kid, who got close with a guy on mother-in-law's course, but the guy was told to break up with her by mother-in-law with a thinly veiled threat against his academic career. We also told the dean about mother-in-law telling me to break up with my fiancé, and vice versa, so she could better maintain professionalism. The dean was horrified. She had me and my fiancé record a video, where we said everything all over again. From the top, we made sure the video had nothing to identify location, and we were assured mother-in-law would never see it. We also sent her all the proof we had alongside it. This was all forwarded to the board on Wednesday and Thursday. She asked my friend for the number again, and just called me for the second time, telling me that the board unanimously agreed this was grounds for mother-in-law's dismissal. They said that while the outside of uni events weren't really their business, they go towards her character, and the fact that as department head, she would represent the department, whether she was on the clock or not. They said even without this, the events that happened inside of uni alone, stopping lectures, telling me to dump my fiancé, telling that other guy to leave her daughter alone, throwing out my stuff, seeking special treatment on grounds of nepotism, were all abuses of power, and enough to justify mother-in-law's dismissal. They asked me why I hadn't filed charges, and I said all I'd gained from filing charges is mother-in-law staying away from me, and the row, and moving away has the same effect. Plus, as it's exam season, my tutor work is really taking off and I don't have the time to go through a whole court case, and I'll have even less time once the baby arrives. The baby is due in about 8 weeks, and mother-in-law has already caused me enough stress. Tomorrow, in the meeting where mother-in-law is fully expecting to be told she got her promotion, the dean is now going to give her a week to hand in her resignation. If she refuses, she will be fired. If she does not hand in her resignation, she will be fired. She will not be getting a reference. The only reason she is being given the option to resign is that she has worked at this university for nearly a decade. But if she so much as raises her voice in the meeting tomorrow, she will be fired. Security will be present for the meeting, in case she tries anything. Meanwhile, the friends we left behind aren't hesitating to tell anyone who will listen all about what mother-in-law did during the course of mine and my fiancé's relationship. There's not a single soul left in the town who trusts her or will take her side if she tries to fight back, not even her husband, who told us that now all their kids are over 18. He will be initiating divorce proceedings. I don't feel even a little bit bad. I know there's a chance I went too far, but I didn't lie, or embellish anything. I just gave the dean the facts as they are. Everything is 100% true, and while it was me who told the dean, I see this as mother-in-law's actions having consequences. Mother-in-law has more than enough money to pay for herself for the foreseeable future. She owns her home, her husband's name is not on the deed, and she bought it before they got married, so she will get the house in the divorce as it's not technically a shared asset, or one acquired during their marriage. She will have a roof over her head, and money in her bank account, and if she wanted to she could get another job, just probably not one as a lecturer. Update. The dean said the firing was happening last week. She said that if mother-in-law didn't present as a danger to us to her, e.g. if mother-in-law lost her cool, and yelled something like "this is all OP's fault," then the dean couldn't break confidentiality, and as we've not heard from her since, we can only assume that she took it well, or as well as possible. We've read your comments/replies, and we've talked, and done some thinking, and we've agreed to look into legal options. We are still not totally sure about pursuing a court case, but we realize that mother-in-law isn't just going to let this go, and she won't be willing to just leave us alone. We also weren't informed that the row would have our address, and my fiancée was also hesitant because despite her actions, mother-in-law did, for the most part, raise him. We looked into it, and it doesn't look like she actually adopted him, so that's something. We're gathering all the evidence we have against her, plus anything the dean, landlord, or anyone else still has, and we're meeting a lawyer later this week as we agree that our personal safety, and the safety of our child should come first. My mother-in-law believes that crystals will heal my dead baby. DW, miscarriage. Trigger warning, miscarriage. My mother-in-law has always been cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, but in a cute way. Like super affectionate, believes in the healing power of crystals, gets the family together to sing Kumbaya around a campfire around Christmas, that kind of thing. Recently though, I think one of her crystals got lodged in her brain, and is turning it to mush. I am just gonna explain the most recent thing, and maybe I'll go back and tell past stories, like the time she put oregano essential oil in someone's salsa to cure their athlete's foot, and made them super sick. So I was pregnant. I am not anymore. My feelings around this are complicated because I didn't want to be pregnant, but miscarriage still sucks. I am still processing. Dear husband doesn't talk to his mom if he can help it. Not because she did anything, he just doesn't like her brand of hippie crazy. His childhood sucked, and he leaves it to his brother to do any communication. How she found out that A, I was pregnant, and B, now I am not sure. I didn't tell anyone other than my mom, and best friend. So her stopping by my work to give me a hug was unexpected. I work in a really informal office, so it wasn't a big deal. Well, that's until she slipped something in my pocket, and started chanting. Oh yeah, chanting. Like babble nonsense in a melodic tone. What the F? I tried to stop her, usher her out, anything, but she just kept going. After 20 to 30 seconds, she stopped, and said that should do the trick. I had no idea what she was talking about, so I asked her. This freaking loon, the baby, I healed her. Keep the crystals, she used some super special magic rock name for it, on you at all times, and everything will be fine. And with that she walked away. Everyone was too shocked to say or do anything, including me. Needless to say, I took an early break, and called dear husband to deal with his mom. Personally, I am feeling crushed. I don't want kids, but this really hurt. It's like it was such a trivial quick fix for her, and I don't know what she is gonna do when there is no baby in 6 months. She does this bat crap stuff all the time. This isn't even the worst, just what I had to deal with recently. F me. I'm glad my mother-in-law's life is falling apart. She deserves it. So, a bit of backstory is in order. I met my wife in high school, and had known her for a while before we started dating. Before we were romantically involved, she would tell me about how strict and controlling her mother was. She'd take her phone away thinking she was hooking up with some boy, and didn't allow her to officially date until she was 16. We were together before that, but weren't able to do anything outside of school until then. When she finally told her, she wasn't pleased. Of course, I had made the first attempt to introduce myself to her while at one of my wife's school drama plays, and she simply scolded me, refused to shake my hand, and went straight to threatening me when, up to this point, I had given her zero reason to do so. Sure, I had expected some sort of tough facade as most parents would give, but she straight up told me she'd hang me on the tree behind her house if she caught us doing the nasty. Okay, whatever, right? Her mother's boyfriend, however, was cool with me. He always had that logical sense that my wife was of age to date, and so long as we did so responsibly, there was no problem. We had great talks together, and he never gave me an issue whatsoever. He wanted us to enjoy our youth in the capacity that we could. A year into dating, I finally got permission from her mother to take her out on a date, so I took her to have dinner with my parents at Outhouse, which was on the street over from her house. Her mother strictly ordered her to be back by 10 p.m. sharp. We ended up having a good time, a good conversation, everything that I had hoped for as a first impression with my parents. Then we looked at the time, 9:58. Crap. We rushed her back to her house, and got there roughly 10 minutes late. Her mother lost it. My mother tried to explain the situation, but her mother yelled at both her and me, called my mother a whore, and slammed the door in our faces after pulling my girlfriend back into her house. I got a call that night where her mother told me I wasn't allowed to see her anymore, and said that if she found out that we were still dating, she'd send her off to boarding school. How cliché, not to be mean, or anything, but she was too poor for that, so it was a petty threat. Yet, it remained possible for her to send her to another family relative in another state or county. Anyway, she and I decided to continue our relationship in secret for months, up until her birthday came. It was her first birthday with me as her boyfriend, but I couldn't obviously do anything. Her selfish mother didn't even throw her a birthday party or give her a cake for that matter. So, I went out, and bought her gifts with what money I was able to save up, and walked 6 miles to her grandmother's house. 6 miles. In the middle of summer, under the blazing sun, she would visit her grandmother's house during her biological dad's weekend, so I dropped it off there hoping that she would find her presents. Her grandmother thought it was a sweet gesture, and ensured that her granddaughter would receive them. She did, but absent-mindedly brought those gifts back home where her mother saw them, and confiscated them. Her mother called me that night, and pretty much told me that she'd blow my brains out if I dared approach her daughter ever again. I know you guys are probably thinking, why the F are you still with this chick with her crazy-ass mom? Well, it was because I genuinely cared about her. I know, super cliché, but I did. None of this was her fault. She shouldn't have to suffer and be miserable because her narcissistic mother tried to run me out. I know I was young at the time, but crap, I cared a lot about this girl. I cared enough to go against her mother. I didn't let her stop me. I still continued to talk to her and date her throughout high school. Eventually, I guess her mother's boyfriend calmed her down and got her to accept the fact that we were still dating. So, she told her daughter one night that she was allowed to see me again, but that I'm not allowed to take her out anymore. All dates were strictly with them or in their house. Of course, I didn't believe it for a second. When I was at their house, she'd always smile and pretend to treat me like a son, but I saw through her bullcrap. Alas, I played along, out of respect for the girl that would end up being my wife. I stuck around and played nice. Then, graduation came. I left for boot camp that summer to go into the Marines, and her mother was overjoyed. She told her daughter things like maybe now you can concentrate on what's important while she went off to college. But, like the old romance story goes, I didn't stop seeing her. I wrote her letters, I called when I could, and she stayed true to me the entire time. I never had any reason to distrust her. Then, I made the young foolhardy decision to get married. At 18, both of our mothers were furious, but I didn't give a crap. I was in love, and so was she. Then, I ended up getting stationed in Japan for 3 years, and she came along to live with me during that time. We got to explore half the world together, and in time, I was able to save up enough money for us to go on our honeymoon in Rome, Italy. It was the top place on her list of places she wanted to visit. I'm happy to say I made the dream come true for her. Meanwhile, her mother ended up marrying that cool-headed boyfriend, and he ended up starting a very successful trucking business. They got a big house, moved out of the small townhouse they had lived in, and he was able to give his wife everything she ever wanted. Cars, motorcycles, the works. The American dream. They then moved to Florida so that he could be closer to his family because his mother was going through some difficult health issues, and that's where their problems started. She quit her work at Hair Cuttery because she didn't feel comfortable making less money than her husband. So, she wanted to go work for him, as a truck driver. She went to get her CDL, commercial driver's license. However, while she was at the trucking school for a month, as her husband found out, she cheated on him, multiple times, with multiple men, sometimes with several of them at once. He was livid, heartbroken, but, most of all, angry. The marriage had been on the rocks for a while leading up to this after they moved down to Florida, but never to the point that he considered either one of them capable of resorting to cheating. Then, it all began to fall apart for her. They're going through the preliminary stages of the divorce right now, but he's taking virtually everything from her. He's fighting to take custody of their son, the house, the cars, nearly everything. The main reason he's being this ruthless was because she purposefully ignored her kids, refusing to call them or even message them during the course of her time at the trucking school. She stated that she was busy studying, when in reality she was committing heinous acts of adultery. And also, because she tried to hide it, she deleted all evidence that it happened off her phone so that he would never find out. But the phone had synced with the cloud when she took the pictures, texted the messages. All of it got uploaded on there. And their son's phone for gaming purposes was synced to the cloud as well. He must have pressed something that caused the cloud to download all that information to the phone, and he brought it up to his father, who made the shocking discovery. My wife's disgusted by what her mother's done. Her husband is a good man with a good heart who gave her the entire world. But it was never enough for her. And I had tried to think that maybe she had changed into a good person after all. But it wasn't true. I might be a bad person for thinking that she deserves it. Maybe she doesn't. Humans make mistakes. But karma sucks, and it was finally time to pay up. I don't need to add this, but she also frequently emotionally and mentally abused her children. All of them have been shaped by some way by her abuse. The cheating occurred in April, and the actual discovery that it was with multiple men was recently. The husband had thought it was just one man up until now. I ended up leaving the Marines to pursue my education, getting a part-time job while my wife found a well-paying job with the local government. Since our return to the States, we've become much closer to my parents, who have fully accepted my wife as their daughter-in-law. Our distance from her parents, who are in Florida, has greatly benefited us, and spared us a great deal of grief. I'm 24 now, and she's 25, and we've made the decision to finally start having children. We're hoping, and praying we can be blessed with such a gift, so that we can break this cycle of narcissism, and treat them better than her mother treated her. TLDR, wife's mom treated our relationship like crap in the dating years. After we got married, she cheated on her husband, who had given her everything, with multiple men. He's taking everything from her now. The day I nullified my marriage is today. I am the one daughter-in-law that had a crazy son-lusting mother-in-law that hated her from day one, and told her so. Okay, many daughter-in-laws here are riddled with that. I am the one that has been married for a week. Today is the day I have nulled the wedding. No need for divorce under 6 months in the country that I live in. I tried. I really tried. His mother tried everything to get me away from her son, and she finally succeeded. Her son had a spine like jelly. If she told him to kill me, he would do it. On to the last straw that brought me to this decision. I have a very crazy allergy against latex. I react really badly to it. We found out when I was a little toddler and I was treated in the hospital, and went into shock after a nurse just touched me. Since then, I have a little sticker on my driver's license and I wear an allergy necklace. I can literally die from sniffing a glove. Ex-mother-in-law knew this. Ex-dear husband told her. Last week, after I got home from work, I was angry with ex-husband. I can't remember why, everything is really fuzzy now, I cannot remember too well. However, I went into bed early. I just bought this bed a month ago. Because I refused to sleep in the old one. Because ex-mother-in-law slept in there the first night after our wedding. I spent my wedding night on the couch. When I laid into bed, it felt really comfy. But I could feel a small layer of plastic under my mattress. I assumed that this was normal. Since it is a new bed, I might have missed some plastic cover on the mattress. I didn't think about it much, and went to sleep. I woke up 17 hours later in the hospital. Ex-mother-in-law cut up 75 latex gloves to create a little layer under my duvet cover. I do not remember, but when ex-dear husband went to bed several hours later, he found me white as a ghost, and sweating, and barely breathing. You know why I knew it was mother-in-law? Because she called me to brag about it, while in the hospital. She told ex-dear husband that she was afraid I would wet the bed, since I acted so childish. Remember, I am a 27-year-old woman. Ex, instead of going full NC, said he was sorry about my behavior. He was sorry. I was in the hospital for a week. Ex visited me once, to make me apologize to his mother, which I did not. I got security, and told everyone he is not allowed to be back in my room. I don't freaking know what happened. I don't. He was not like that. We were together for 5 years. We were not naive kids. It is like I married a man that I have never met before. I am still shaking with anger, and disappointment. And I am pissed at myself. How could I have married such an excuse for a man? How can I still freaking love him? After everything he has done to me? Married at the 25th of January. Nulled the marriage at the 20th of February. I will try to calm down. Maybe I can tell you about all the other crap she has done to me. I still have no name, and I cannot think of another one than Lucifer. Thank you for reading. Mother-in-law attempted to have my daughter call my brother-in-law daddy. My mother-in-law is a lunatic who believes I should have ended up with my brother-in-law. Rundown. Brother-in-law and I were friends in high school. Brother-in-law got a crush on me. I didn't reciprocate. He took it badly. In college, I started dating his older brother who also attended that college. I feel some blame can fall on me here because I knew how brother-in-law felt and I ended up with his older brother. But that's just how it goes at times. I didn't intend for it to happen. Brother-in-law told mother-in-law a very different story than what the truth was. Outings with me and my group of friends in high school were one-on-one dates according to brother-in-law. We were highly sexual, according to brother-in-law. Basically, he told her we were the one true pairing of the world, and we'd be together forever. It didn't work out that way. Mother-in-law accused me of a lot of things when I started dating my now husband, and eventually had to step back because of how many people backed my version of events up. Shockingly, the truth has witnesses. Years passed. Brother-in-law has always made me, and dear husband feel uncomfortable, and so we don't see him that much. We see mother-in-law twice a month at most, so she has supervised playtime with the kids. She even once asked dear husband if he'd be open to sharing me with brother-in-law at one point. It was a rough few years. Last visit with mother-in-law ends up coinciding with brother-in-law being there. We push on with formalities, and dear husband steps out for a smoke, leaving me to supervise dear son and dear daughter while mother-in-law plays with them on the floor. Dear son is old enough to call brother-in-law uncle brother-in-law. Dear daughter is still going through her first words. I get up for a few moments to leave the teacups in the kitchen and I get back to see her holding dear daughter up to brother-in-law, and saying, "Say hi to daddy. Say hi to daddy." He was playing along, and making faces at her. The only reaction I had was to grab the kids, and leave while they protested. I explained why we were rushing out to dear husband in the car, and he was really upset. He called mother-in-law to find out what the hell she was up to, and she just got very defensive about me not hearing correctly. Dear husband lied, and said he'd heard it as well, and she stuttered that she was just letting the children know the truth. Their daddy was brother-in-law. Dear husband was being stupid by not realizing I was cheating on him, and being taken in by my charms so I could bag both brothers. We're putting them both on a timeout, and mother-in-law is not happy that her twice-monthly grandma visits are cancelled for the next 4 months. I see nicknames are a thing here. I feel I'll be posting a bit about this lunatic and I'm not very imaginative, so if anyone wants to give her one, I'm all ears. Edit. Thank you all for the advice. I need to take a step back, and reevaluate things, and speak to my husband. I welcome all further advice on the matter, but I do really need to gather my thoughts, and assess the situation. Update. Mother-in-law fell into the trap she set for me. Updating one more time. The situation with my mother-in-law is escalating so fast I can't even believe it, but at least now she might receive what she deserves. The night after I wrote the previous post, I had a very tiresome shift. Family fights, drunk people in bars, and on streets. We had to chase a speeding car throughout the whole city, and the driver then decided to run away. We had to pursue him on foot. So when I finally got home at about 7 a.m. the next morning, I was so exhausted I knocked out as soon as I reached my bed. I put my phone on silent mode because no one should bother me when I get my few hours of sleep after night shifts. The next day I didn't have a shift, so there was no reason for anyone from my work to call me. I wasn't worried about that. However, around noon I woke up to several missed calls from the police station I work at. I called back and I was told to arrive immediately due to an emergency. I didn't think much of it at first, because it happens sometimes. If something extraordinary has occurred, the police station mobilizes as many officers as they can. Not often, but it happens, so I didn't think for a moment it could be something about me. But when I got there, I found out that in the morning, while I was sound asleep, a woman had come to report a kidnapping. She claimed that an officer who works at this police station, aka me, has kidnapped her son, and is keeping him captive in his home. I knew instantly it was mother-in-law, but this time I was like, it's not funny anymore. There are minor offenses, and then there are offenses that could potentially ruin your career. She was accusing me of a felony, which, if proven, not only would get me fired, and disqualify me from ever being a police officer again, but also charge me very seriously, up to life imprisonment. Even though I knew I'm not guilty, I got really scared, I'll be honest, because I didn't know what else mother-in-law has prepared, maybe some fake evidence or something. She was promised it'll be investigated, and she had been like, what is there to investigate, just fire him already. The captain called me to his office, and asked me to explain to him what's going on because he doesn't know what to think when there's this woman accusing one of his officers of something so serious. And well, my country is about 50-50 liberal, there are nice people, but there are also enough of people who think like mother-in-law. It was a horrible moment for me. I'm in the closet and I so didn't want to come out. But I had no other choice. If I refused to speak, it would make him suspicious. So I told the truth, that this woman is my mother-in-law. The man that she's talking about is my boyfriend, we're a couple, and mother-in-law doesn't like it. So she's making up various lies to separate us. I also told about the hospital joke she pulled days ago. The captain was understanding, but he said he needs to check the information I gave him, which I totally understand. You cannot just blindly believe someone. Police officers commit crimes too. His order was to arrange a meeting between me, my boyfriend, and mother-in-law to see who's lying, and who's not. I had to calm down my boyfriend before that. He was so mad he was ready to strangle mother-in-law then, and there. When we entered the room, mother-in-law was already there, and she acted as if he actually had been kidnapped. She ran up to him, and hugged him while crying. My boyfriend pushed her away, and told her to never touch him again. He confirmed my words, that he has never been kidnapped, that he's with me because he wants to be with me, and he's living in my house willingly. Mother-in-law wasn't having that. Of course, she did everything she could to fool the captain, crying, inventing things that have never happened, and words that I have never said to her, but eventually ended up tangled in her own lies. She said I have been keeping my boyfriend in captivity for 4 years, and the captain was like, so you mean your son was kidnapped for 4 years, and you decided to file a report only now? Doesn't make sense, ma'am. She said I have intimidated him, and that's why he's now saying he's with me willingly, that he wasn't so cold with her before, that I have ruined him, that I had threatened her. At that point her bullcrap didn't even sound credible. She hadn't thought it through. She was just saying whatever came into her mind. I could clearly see that the captain doesn't believe her at all, and I think mother-in-law realized it too. So when the captain told her that she's wasting police's time, and advised her to get over her prejudices about gay people, she decided to take a more personal approach, and asked the captain if he has children. I know he does have children, he has 2 daughters, but he seemed annoyed, and told her that her question is totally inappropriate right now, and has nothing to do with this situation. She insisted that he should side with her on this because as a police officer he should do this, and he should do that, and react like this, and say that. It was clear to everyone that there has been no kidnapping, and she basically made a false report, and aggravated the situation by starting to tutor the captain how he should work. He might have gone easier on her. But you don't teach someone who has been in service for almost 20 years how to do his job. Her plan to get me in trouble ended with her getting arrested, and now she's the one who's facing charges for filing a false police report. And what makes it even worse is that she falsely accused not just a civilian, but a police officer. When mother-in-law realized that the tables have been turned against her, and that very soon she'll find out what a jail cell looks like from the inside, she looked terrified. I bet she didn't calculate how far can she go with this without having to face the consequences. She probably thought that even if she's discovered, the officers will just shake their finger at her, and be like, that was not a nice thing to do, don't do it again. The legal system doesn't work like that. And the funny thing is that until the trial she could be released for a bail, but my boyfriend categorically refused to pay anything. We could technically afford it, but he was like, no way, let her sit there, and think about what she's doing to her son. So unless she gets someone else to pay her bail, which I highly doubt because it's not a small amount of money, all the time until her trial she'll have to spend in jail. And when she heard that we're not going to pay her bail, she got mad as hell. The trial will take place next week, I will have to be there. My boyfriend will have to be there. Trials are not a pleasant thing to be part of, and I don't know now what her punishment will be. It could be anything from paying a fine till imprisonment up to 10 years. I'll let you know how this goes. But I just hope that maybe now she'll finally realize that karma is a bitch. Everything in this life has a boomerang effect. What you do to other people will eventually get back to you. If this doesn't open her eyes, then I don't know what will. Also, I hope things calm down at my police station. The captain promised me he won't tell anyone anything about my sexuality, but when she came to make that report, she referred to me as the Nancy boy cop, and the rumors spread like wildfire. So I feel like everyone here has their doubts now. People realize that no one has ever seen me with a woman, and probably think that she might be right. No one is saying anything to my face, but I think my fellow officers think they found out something about me they didn't know before. Subsing shower was cancelled. No one bothered to call me. Let me preface this by saying, my fiancé is a sweet man, but he's a man. We are getting married on the 26th of this month, and I have essentially planned the whole wedding myself with very little input or effort on his part. His parents have been struggling financially for a couple years now, ever since my mother-in-law lost her accounting job, and just kinda decided to retire early. Family be damned. She cleans houses on occasion, I think. Their financial problems were so great, that they decided to take out a payday loan in my fiancé's name. Him and Dad have the same name. Dad knew his social. Didn't bother to tell us that either. They did this despite having a couple rental properties they probably could have sold, and 2 older, More well-to-do children who probably would have lent them the $2,000. Dad pays the interest on it, and has maybe taken $500 off the principal in 2+ years. So our wedding has been delayed for 3 years after engagement because we had to save up money to pay for everything ourselves. My family has pitched in what they can, and my mother has helped me more than anyone. A couple months ago, my fiance's aunt, mom's sister, tells me she'd like to host a shower. How nice. But then she proceeds to send me 4-page-long texts of shower planning talk while I'm at work. Several times, she asks for the addresses of all my friends and family. I explained that my mother just had hip surgery, and no one else could really drive the distance easily. Plus my aunt was hosting a shower for everyone back home. I really just wanted and expected this to be a family gathering for his side of the family. She wanted to formally mail invitations to everyone I know, and I just didn't have the capacity or desire to do that. Maybe that is why it got cancelled? I don't know. Fast forward to yesterday, and fiancé casually texts me to say the shower, planned for this Sunday, was cancelled. I ask why, and he says his dad told him that my mother-in-law blew off the aunt, and now they're mad. No other explanation. I made him call his mother when he got home, and she said I don't remember what. Aunt said, it's really not a big deal. I mean, yeah, not to her, but it's kind of a big deal to us. Person shrugging. She then goes on to mention that Sunday is her birthday, and we should all get together. I yelled I'm busy. In the background, she helped pick that date specifically. I even suggested that we don't do it on her birthday. And here it is, the next day, and mother-in-law nor aunt have called me to talk about it. I'm so done, and will no longer join their family for holidays after this. Every year my mom plans in advance, and works around what his mom tells her they're doing. Then, like clockwork, the week of said holiday she will change it to a time that overlaps with my family plans. I feel paranoid to think that they do things like this to spite me, but I really don't see any other explanations. Banned stepmom and dad from wedding. This is about my stepmom. I don't like, and never refer to her as my stepmom in real life though. I don't know her that well. Background: I've never been a fan of her because she has always talked bad about my mom. First time she met my brother, she introduced herself as the woman who replaced my mom. When my grandparents were in poor health and dying, my mom would go visit them because they were close, and my grandparents loved her like a daughter still, and my stepmom would flip out and tell her to leave, but I was still always nice to her just to keep peace. So my dear husband and I were getting married, and to be polite I asked my toxic dad to walk me down the aisle. I have a bad past history with him. He was very emotionally abusive. As the time gets closer, and people are starting to RSVP, I get my dad's RSVP, and it shows him, stepmom, and some woman's name I've never heard of. I texted him asking who this was, and he said it was stepmom's daughter. I told him he should have asked me before he invited her. We were trying to keep our wedding really small since we were paying for it all on our own. Next thing I know, stepmom is calling me yelling asking if I have a problem, and I said they should have asked. I've never met this person, and they don't get A+1. She then screams "F you swine," which I yelled back to her, and hung up. She then starts texting me saying that my wedding isn't worth going to anyways. I have happily been no contact with them both since. I was nervous they would show up to my wedding just to cause drama. Thankfully they didn't show. Also, I'll add that her daughter is a grown woman. She has children of her own. She isn't a little kid that needed to come with. Husband broke no contact with mother-in-law last night and I learned who I'm married to. TLDR, my husband is a freaking prick, and 90% of what I've been dealing with is his fault. My husband broke no contact with mother-in-law last night. I don't know why. For the past month, she has been calling in upwards of 12 times a day. He responded to her text, and they got in a 3-hour fight over text. It was very enlightening, and I finally learned a few reasons why my mother-in-law and her family are convinced that I am a raging piece of crap. 1. While I was pregnant, I started to feel like my husband wasn't mature enough to handle being a father and I was considering leaving him. I told him this, and that I didn't think I wanted to have a baby with him. The original outcome was that mother-in-law had somehow gotten in her head that I was having an abortion. The reason she thought this? My husband called her crying and literally told her that I was currently at the clinic getting an abortion. 2. The morning of my gender reveal ultrasound, I got up at 6 a.m. to go find out what I was having, and then I was heading to work. I had no cell phone because we were freaking broke and I worked 12-hour days. My husband didn't go with me because he didn't feel like getting up. He didn't have a job at the time. He just didn't feel like getting up, so he didn't get to find out what we were having. I wasn't able to call him because I didn't have a cell phone, so he called sister-in-law A, and told her I was keeping my daughter's gender from him. 3. After I had my daughter, I had horrible postpartum depression. He would call his mother, and sister-in-law A, and sister-in-law B, and tell them I wasn't taking care of the house, wasn't taking care of the baby. He refused to get up and change diapers. He didn't help clean or take care of anything. We got into a horrible fight because he wanted to go bowling and I was exhausted. He started screaming at me about how I'm lazy and I never want to do anything, and all I do is lay around this house, and he works all week, and he's tired of never doing anything, and I slapped him. Yes, I hit him. I don't feel good about it. There wasn't really anything I felt good about at the time. He called mother-in-law and told her that I beat him. I'm not justifying that I slapped my husband, but by this point, a lot had happened with mother-in-law. Calling her and telling her this was throwing gas on the fire. She called CPS, she tried to have my daughter taken away, and she told everyone I was an unfit parent and I needed to have my daughter taken away. Meanwhile, I was completely alone, unemployed, with a premature newborn, and horrible postpartum depression. My husband, meanwhile, is acting completely innocent in all of this. Oh, I don't know why mother-in-law would be telling everyone these awful things. On a positive note, CPS actually got me some information for a low-cost therapist and I got on some meds, and the postpartum depression, and everything got better. 4. After daughter's first shots, which I took her to, I didn't immediately call him. Again, I had no cell phone. So he called sister-in-law A, and told her that, again, I was keeping information from him. He called her from our home phone while I was sleeping and I woke up because he started screaming at her, but again, no clue why these people think I'm a piece of crap. I am absolutely livid. For the past 5 years, we've been no contact. He has continually said crap to me like, yeah, I'd love to have a relationship with my sisters, but they hate you, and things like that. He is always saying everyone knows my mom is crazy. I don't know why so many people believe her. They don't believe her, they believe him. They believe him when he says his wife beats him, that she is getting an abortion, that she doesn't take care of her daughter, that she is keeping information about his daughter away from him. He did this, he started the fire. I really don't know how to think and feel right now. I knew that at the beginning of our relationship, he would call and tell his mother things that I felt were too private, but I didn't know he was literally the one who falsely told her I was getting an abortion. I thought she had jumped to that conclusion on her own. I didn't know he had told her about the time I slapped him. I didn't know he used to secretly tell his sisters I was a bad mother. I don't know what else he's told them about me. I am at a complete loss. I am not excusing mother-in-law and the sister-in-law behavior. They might have been fed this information, but they made their decisions too. They were all parents. They had all experienced the stresses of newborns and postpartum depression. There is no excuse for their behavior towards me, and the levels they escalated this to. There are certainly a lot of things mother-in-law has dreamed up about me that weren't put there by my husband, like she is convinced that I sleep with a pillow with my ex-husband's face on it, WTF, and that I am mad at sister-in-law A because her husband called me the wrong name. What? And she's pissed at me because I laughed when she wanted me to name my daughter Lauren and I didn't. Maybe this happened. Honestly don't even remember, but I really don't know where to go from here either. My husband was the one who set the events in motion to destroy my reputation with his family. It's no wonder they hate me. I had no chance. To them, I'm a lazy abusive spouse. He is still trying to tell me that he was brainwashed, and he had no idea how they would react. But he has always maintained his mother was awful, and they've never gotten along. I feel like he did this on purpose because he wanted them to react this way. I feel justified in that feeling based on what I know about them. I really think our marriage can't come back from this. Mother-in-law has caught on that I'm a gold digger. This is short, but I just wanted to get it off my chest. For the entire time we've been married, my husband has been in a position where he was getting his foot in the door in order to eventually move to a role he wanted. Pretty common. During that time, I was literally bringing in twice the amount he was, and covering most of rent, bills, food, etc. I had no problem with it. I wanted dear husband to be in a job he'd enjoy and I knew he'd eventually get there, and things would even out. We lived off of my income, and a little help from credit cards. Well, now he's gotten that promotion, yay, and is bringing in almost double of what I am. It's a big deal and I'm very proud of him. Plus, I mean, dual income and no kids money for days. But of course, mother-in-law has to say something. She just has to tell dear husband she's worried about my true intentions in this relationship, especially now that he's bringing home the bacon. Yes, mother-in-law, as a 14-year-old I just looked at him, and knew he'd one day make lots of money. I just had to hunker down, and wait until I was 28, and pay in a lot of money, and one day I knew I'd get my investment back. A 15-year-long con. By the way, mother-in-law is still unemployed. She's been calling dear husband daily asking for help, and begging him to send in a resume, and write cover letters for her. Mom, we updated your resume for you, and then we wrote out a template for your cover letters. If you're unable to put those into an email, You're probably not cut out for a job that deals with computers in any capacity. I know how to use computers. Don't be condescending, just help me. My son is your children's father, and there's nothing you can do about that. This is the exact quote my former mother-in-law screamed at me in my own driveway back in 2006, while her worthless, meth addict son literally hid behind her. My girls were 3 and 6, and my fiancé had already taken them in the house. What set her off was hearing my kids call him dad, which we hadn't taught them. They had just started doing it because her precious son only saw my girls 4 or 5 times a year. So here I have this garbage human that literally had his mommy fighting his battles, who didn't answer his phone when I called, didn't work or pay child support, and didn't even know our youngest daughter's birthday or how to spell our oldest child's middle name. And then I have this fiancé, this sweet, kind-hearted man who fell in love with me, and my girls, who said to me when he proposed, "Those girls deserve a dad and I want to be it." This guy wanted the job, so why should I be dealing with this fool and his jackass mother anymore? I replied to her, "Nothing I can do about it." Huh? I guess we'll see about that. That was the last time she saw my kids. I never called her son again. And I stopped answering her phone calls. It's amazing how quickly he disappeared when I stopped forcing him to do his job. My fiancé and I married that fall. We filed adoption papers after Christmas. My ex didn't contest it. He didn't show up to court. His mother showed up on my doorstep on Easter, but my husband told her to take a hike. My children are 20 and 17 now. They don't know my ex. In 14 years, they have not seen or heard from him. No phone calls or birthday cards, no social media requests. If he walked by them on the street, he would just be any other guy to them. He's been completely erased from my children's lives. He does not exist to them. He is not their father. So yeah, I guess there was something I could do about it. Mother-in-law ruined the birth of my son 4 days ago. I made this account specifically to come on here to vent about my mother-in-law. I'm still pretty shocked about what happened, and still kind of baby-brained after the birth of my son 4 days ago, so I hope this makes sense. I've never got on with my mother-in-law, and have probably met her about 10 times since I've been with my partner. Mother-in-law has never liked me, and it's obvious. She doesn't speak to me, she ignores me, she leaves me out. If she does speak to me, it's to say something derogatory. She started being a bit nicer when me and my partner found out I was expecting. She was very excited for her first grandchild, and we finally had something she would talk to me about. She asked my partner several times if she could be in when I gave birth. That was a firm no, and I didn't think about it again really until she stormed into the delivery room 4 days ago. I was in active labor by then with the gas and air, and she suddenly appeared out of nowhere. I'm an incredibly shy and anxious person, and I could not bring myself to ask her to leave myself. I just have no balls. I know this is terrible. I presumed my partner would ask her to leave. He didn't. Whenever I had an examination, I said it was time to go. Instead, she left the room insisting my partner went with her, so I was alone, and then they would return a bit later. She stayed for hours and I started to feel like I needed to push, but I desperately did not want to push with her in the room. Eventually I just told my partner it was time to ask her to leave, and mother-in-law looked furious. He did though, and she left. Fast forward to an hour later. The baby was not coming out no matter how hard I pushed, and things had started to get panicky in the delivery room. I ended up on my hands and knees in the least dignified position, and then mother-in-law came back into the room. I was freaking mortified. Partner had to get her to leave again. The pushing wasn't working, and we ended up in theater. It ended up being a forceps delivery, which was extremely traumatic, and I've had more stitches than I even feel comfortable with saying. In theater, people kept coming in and saying that mother-in-law was trying to get in. When we came out of theater, more people came and said she was trying to get in to see the baby. I was horrified. My partner didn't think it was as bad as I was making out. I allowed visits the next day, and my mom came first. I made sure of that. And mother-in-law came slightly later because I told her the wrong visiting time so my mom could meet the baby first. I know that's childish, but I felt like after what happened it was the last thing I could do to get my own back. Mother-in-law wasn't happy she wasn't the first to meet the baby. 4 days on, and mother-in-law asks every day to come and see the baby, but I'm absolutely furious at what she did. I'm also trying to establish breastfeeding and I'm anxious and vulnerable and I don't want her around. She keeps telling my partner I'm mean and horrible keeping her away from the baby. I don't know what to do. I've spoken to my partner about it, but I haven't pushed it about how upset I am about it all because I'm trying to enjoy time with my baby. I feel really let down by him for not sticking up for me more and keeping her out properly. I feel confused about medical staff not keeping her away when I said I didn't want her in there. One of the midwives said to me after the birth that the reason the labor went so badly was probably a lot to do with how stressful I was finding it having mother-in-law in the room when I didn't want her there, and honestly I feel like that's true. TLDR, mother-in-law kept appearing when I was in labor, which stressed me out immensely, and I blame her for me having to have forceps because I was too scared to push when she was in the room, and too scared to ask her to leave. Here's an update. Firstly, thank you so much to everyone who commented. I could not believe the kindness and validation. It really overwhelmed me and made me realize just how messed up the birth of my son was. I actually sent the link to my partner the day I wrote the post and he thought it was just a really similar birth story. I was like, no, I wrote that. He was shocked at the comments, devastated at the realization he'd messed up so badly, and immediately brought it up with his mother. She accused me of being overdramatic, horrible, and removed all the pictures of the baby from her social media. There was a back and forth of arguing between my partner and my mother-in-law for a few days, and father-in-law told me not to expect an apology from her because it's just how she is. Yesterday, she did message me and said sorry for the misunderstanding, and basically turned everything round to her not understanding she wasn't meant to be there. Confused face. I haven't responded, but my partner thinks this is the best I'm going to get, and I should accept it. I don't think it's enough. I haven't responded to her message and she keeps messaging my partner asking him why I haven't replied. Breastfeeding is going well and I'm enjoying my lovely baby, but I'm pretty depressed at the moment, and a lot of that feeling is to do with the awful birth. I'm not healing correctly and I can still hardly walk. Again, thank you so much for the response to my original post. If anyone has more advice for what I can do or say, I'd appreciate it. In regards to medical staff not intervening, I have made a complaint and am awaiting response. Knucking Futz. My husband and I are both in our early 30s now, but we're high school sweethearts. We met when we were 13, and were best friends for a few years before we started dating. We had a tight-knit group of friends, and hung out as a group all the time. My husband had a traumatic childhood, and was neglected growing up. In high school, we both worked, and would buy his necessities, but so would my own parents. My mom even took him to an optometrist, and got him the glasses he desperately needed. My mother-in-law was always very odd, but as soon as we started dating, her hatred for me became known, and I can honestly say with a clear conscience that even when I was treated badly, I was still respectful and quiet towards her. She's very religious, and twice as a teenager, my husband, obviously at the time my boyfriend, would be hanging out at my house, and when it was time for him to go home I would be invited over for dinner. I would walk into his house to find chairs set up in a circle around the living room, and people from her church would be waiting for us. They would ask why I was taking her son away from her, and how could we be comfortable together, in a life full of sin. It was freaking bonkers, guys. I wish I was making this up. When we turned 18, he moved in with me, and my family, while we attended college, and worked. We moved into our own apartment, and got married a few years later. His entire side of the family refused to come to our wedding because she badmouthed me so badly. His older, and younger sister loved me though, and were in my bridal party. They have always accepted me, and loved me, and agreed with my husband that my mother-in-law was just crazy, and this is how things always were with her. I was pregnant a few months after our wedding, and would get phone calls from his grandmother and aunt saying I was a disgusting human being for taking away their grandson and nephew. I was so stressed all of the time, and would cry to my husband that I was sorry his family felt that way. It truly broke my heart to be so hated. They only hated me because my mother-in-law constantly bad-talked me. They refused to come to our baby shower. My husband put his foot down, called his mother, grandmother, and aunt, and told them if they couldn't accept me, they would get none of us. They said that was fine. They didn't speak to us for 3 years. We ran into my mother-in-law one day while we were out when our daughter was 3 years old, and mother-in-law cried when she saw her, explained she's been going to therapy, and has gotten help. We believed her, and gave her a chance. We allowed her to have supervised visits with our daughter, and had a weekly dinner. A year later, my husband and I adopted 2 sweet little boys, both born drug addicted, and with special needs. A few years into this, through lots of therapy, and developmental appointments, we find out they had fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, and our older son was diagnosed with reactive attachment disorder as well as oppositional defiance disorder. This past January my husband and I were approached by 2 different people letting us know that my mother-in-law had been talking crap about our children, and she even told them that if I was a better mother, my son wouldn't have any of these diagnoses. I lost it. I broke down. For the first time in 15 years of us being together I confronted her. I told her that I was her daughter-in-law, and the mother of her grandchildren, and no longer would she speak against me or my children ever again. She didn't apologize, but agreed with me. Later that night, my sister-in-law calls me, and says that her mom was running around the house speaking to herself, and throwing things. My husband went over there, and my mother-in-law explained to him that she was a drug addict, and she only spoke badly of me and her grandchildren because she was both high and drunk. She said she's addicted to Ambien. My husband and sister-in-laws told her she couldn't be addicted to that. She said she was also high on oxycodone. My husband and sister-in-laws pleaded with her to get mental health help. They knew she was lying about being an addict. The following day, she checked herself into a rehab facility, and had my husband down as her point of contact for the facility. Days later my husband got a phone call that they did a full blood test, and found absolutely nothing in her system. She was embarrassed she got caught lying, and tried to check herself out, but they offered her mental health services. Now, she has a few people from the drug rehab she was in, calling her mom, and always posting on her Facebook wall about how she's the greatest mom they ever had. I got a Facebook message from one of them a few minutes ago. They asked me why I took her children away from her. Upside down face. If you made it this far, thanks. She's put me through a lot more and I could honestly write a novel about it. I'm just losing my freaking mind, and needed to vent. I'm sorry if this sounded scrambled or confusing. Am I right for banning my mother-in-law from seeing our children? So I have been with my partner for 3 years. I used to get on with his mother extremely well. Well, I thought I did. She would make passive-aggressive backhanded comments that would make me wonder. But until I became pregnant I didn't know for sure. So 11 months ago, I found out I was pregnant with twins. At 28 with no previous pregnancies, we weren't trying. I have endometriosis. I was told I would have a difficult time ever getting pregnant, so it was a big shock. My partner was not over the moon, and became really horrible towards me. He told me his desire for me to abort, and that I should leave if I decided to keep them. I told him I didn't believe in abortion out of convenience. Things were really tense for a long time. A mutual friend of mine and his mother knew, and told me it was best to tell his mother what was going on. Little did I know, she already knew. We meet for lunch where she proceeded to tell me if you love these children, you'll abort them. You don't have to leave their bodies at the clinic, we can take them home, and bury them to honor them. That because I was 16 weeks along, I would have to go to a special clinic that did late-term abortions, and I would have to lie to get one done. She had rung ahead of time, and booked me in for an appointment. I said this wasn't going to happen, it's my body, my babies, and no one can force me to abort. I'm 28 years old, not 13. She became angry, and said as I had tears in my eyes, no, we won't become emotional over this. She said if I did decide to keep them they would live horrible lives. I should adopt them out as a single person can't raise 2 babies. That if I didn't do that I am to leave town immediately, and break up with her son, and not to put him on the birth certificate as he shouldn't have to pay child support. I was mortified, holding back tears. I politely said goodbye, and left. I told my partner the next day what happened, and he became irate at his mother. She then turned up without invitation, and started to cry crocodile tears saying how sorry she was, not that she said it, but that I took offense to it. She blamed the fact she was an Aries, and liked things to get done for her actions. I pretended it was okay, and accepted her apology as I felt put on the spot with them both staring at me. The next day she said she wanted to throw me a baby shower as she was so excited. I declined politely. Fast forward a few months, I was 28 weeks, and went into early labor from preeclampsia caused partly by the stress I was under. I gave birth in a rural hospital. They barely made it. One had to be resuscitated, and then they were flown 7 hours away to an intensive care unit. She turned up uninvited to the hospital before they were taken, and made the nasty comment that she didn't think they were her son's children because they had blonde hair. I naturally had blonde hair. I couldn't believe it. We didn't know if they would survive the night, and here she was making crap comments like that. Not that she should have been there anyway. None of my family were at the hospital. She tried to make my partner leave me at the hospital alone without my babies. Traumatized and scared, I ended up discharging myself, and almost died because of it. 5 days later, I was hospitalized for hypertensive crisis, and I was fighting for my life. She started texting my partner nasty little comments about me, trying to break us apart all while I was barely conscious. Weeks later she asked if she was welcome to come visit them. I said no. We finally got them home after 139 days, and since being here she's made my life hell. We live in a small town where she grew up, and my friends and family are over 400 km away. She's been telling everyone that I'm being irrational, and banned her from seeing them for absolutely no reason. She won't tell people what she said, just that I won't allow her over. It's a small town, everyone knows everything, and I'm coming off like a real villain. I'm trying to get into routine, and start to process the horror of what happened, and relax a little bit, but she's making things really difficult. She told people that I'm stunting their growth, and developmentally hurting them by not allowing her to look after them. and come over whenever she wants. I don't allow anyone to look after them. They are my responsibility. I almost lost them over 5 times during their NICU stay, so I just want a few months to settle in and enjoy my babies. Am I being unreasonable? Sorry for the novel BTW, embarrassed smiley face. She makes my partner feel bad by saying she's upset and crying all the time over this situation. She doesn't seem to care she made me upset and cry all the time during my pregnancy, which contributed to the preterm birth. Then, after when it was touch and go for all 3 of us, she continued to be a right brat. My dad wants to keep track of me. He wants me to send him my location when I go out, and wants to keep a key to my apartment. I am a female in my early 20s and have been living on my own since September, when I finally had the opportunity to leave my mom's awful home. I love living alone, but for the past month my dad and his wife have been staying with me while they look for their own place. They recently moved up here from Texas about a month and a half after I did. This isn't really a problem as they're mostly here due to work and keep the place clean, and are respectful of my space. Lately, my dad has been telling me that whenever I go out I need to send him my location in case he needs to come get me. Like, I get where he's coming from, but it also makes me feel like I'm back at my mother's house having to tell her every time I want to go out and where I am going to be. I do not want to tell my dad where I am going to be, and I do not want to have to tell him when I am going to go out because it's none of his business what I do in my spare time. Another thing is that he wants to keep a key to my apartment, and he wants his wife to keep one too. They each already have one since they have been staying with me, and need to come and go, but they get the keys to their place tomorrow, and I want mine back. He also says he wants to give me a key to his place, but I am honestly good without. I'm 99% sure they would never come in without my permission, but I don't want to worry about things like that ever. Am I overreacting here? I want him to give me my keys back, but I feel like a swine just thinking about telling him, and like everyone will be mad at me. Also, is it normal for parents to ask their adult children to report every time they go out? For more clarification, I know where my dad is coming from and I know that he's worried about me, but he was never a big part of my life growing up, and now he wants to play catch up. I don't want anyone to have access to my home except myself and my landlord. I have been handling things on my own, and don't want to depend on him for anything because then everyone will say that I owe him. It has happened before, and I don't want it to happen again. He never even asked me if he could have the key to my apartment. He just said me and my wife are each keeping a key to your place after we move out in case there is an emergency or you need something that we can get for you. He then changed the subject so quickly I didn't even have time to object. He jokes about how I better not have anyone in the apartment, my apartment, and he also jokes about hitting me as punishment if I do anything wrong, and then gets offended when I say that no, he won't be putting his hands on me. He gets upset because I'm talking back, and he is my father. When he got here, the first thing he said to me was that he wanted me to break the lease for my apartment and move in with him and his wife, and that it would be the same as living alone because I would have my own room. He's very inquisitive about my love and intimate life, and I can't even tell him it's none of his business because he gets upset and goes and calls one of my family members to tell them I'm being mean to him. How do I handle this? Narcissist brother tells kids I am a thief. He lied to his kids about having a college fund. Now that they're going to college, he tells them I stole it. So the jerk I am related to by womb and sperm is less than 1 year older than me. We have a narcissist mother, and he was GC. I was scapegoat. Everyone in the family remembers how I was abused by her, and he was favored. I got the better end of the stick. He was spoiled and I was abused. I left home in my late teens, and never looked back. He's a pathological liar, and his stories would blow you away, like the time SeaWorld wanted him to do a necropsy on a dead whale. He's not a marine biologist of any sort, and SeaWorld is a marine research facility, or whatever. Insert opinions here, but it has the means to hire the right guy for that job, yet he insisted they called on him for this. In actuality, he was covering up for having an affair which gave his wife chlamydia when she was 9 months pregnant. He's an a-hole. He has lied to his kids about every aspect of his work, and life, and past. They used to believe him. Like he would say, "My dad used to own that building." While driving down a highway, I was like, "No, your dad worked at Domino's Pizza when he lived here." Now the time for the college fund is almost here, and the crap hit the fan, and they are starting to see that he was a liar. Dear nephew is going off to college next year. His jerk dad has always said he had a college fund. Well, it's time to disclose how much money is in it, and he can't do that because it never existed. So he's told him that I took the money for my education saying I would pay it back, and never did. I have been on my own since I first left home, and I paid my own way through 3 degrees with no help from anyone, but my husband. I have never taken 1 cent from that a-hole. I haven't even talked to him in 25 years other than a couple words a year when we're in the same house. I want so badly to be there for those kids. I love them dearly, and their mom and I are close. She left him this year. They are starting to see through his lies, but they will spend their whole lives teasing out what might have been true, and what was not. This is a plausible lie because I've been in school for so many years, and still am. His former wife told me he said this. She said the kids can't know I know this because they weren't supposed to say anything to her, and she doesn't want to betray their trust. I don't want to betray her confidence or say anything to the kids where they will have to wonder if I am a liar. I have already caused drama that was hard for them by enforcing boundaries with toxic mom on behalf of my kids when my niece and nephew visited, which she took out on them because their mom was not there to protect them. I have been upfront with everyone about my version of the truth in all situations. I hope they at least suspect I didn't steal their college funds. I'm sick about this. I want to be there for my niece and nephew as they transition into adulthood, and away from the sickness that is their grandmother and father, but I don't know how, or if they even trust me. Toxic in-laws manipulated my ex to get back with me so I can be their surrogate. I'm sorry this is going to be a long story, but I really need to tell someone about it. Please forgive my writing, I'm an emotional wreck at this moment. On to my story. So, my brother and I are in our mid-30s. We have always known since we were kids that I was going to carry his children when it came time. It started as a joke when we were teens when our friends talked about kids, and what we were going to be when we grew up. My brother always said that he wanted to have a lot of kids, and since he is gay it was known to us that it wouldn't be through traditional methods. So when we talked about it, even if it wasn't serious, he would always say I would bear his bio kids for him, and I would always answer that I would without a doubt. Now let me clarify that our bond is extremely strong. We are each other's safe place, and we would take a bullet for the other without a second thought. Our father died when we were very young. We were left poor to the point of not knowing when we were going to have our next meal, and our mother went into year-long phases of depression, and got sick, so we only had each other to lean on. His coming out to her was a total disaster that fortunately the three of us managed to recover from, with me picking up the pieces of what was left to patch up, and glue back together, along with other serious family issues, but we survived, and we are stronger. Time passed, he and I fought, and studied hard to get good college scholarships, work, and get it through university, and that was what separated us physically. We went to study in different states across the country, but that never really made us grow apart. We have talked literally every day, and still do to this day. Through all of that we started building his kid plan. He intended to adopt a couple of kids, and have 2 of his own, and together we decided both our timing to do it. Financial matters, medical matters, legal matters, everything. I was a fence sitter about children of my own until I traveled to do business for the company I worked for my first job. I was only an assistant then, but I decided then and there that children were not for me. I wanted to focus on my career, and build a life for myself child-free. In college I met my ex-BF. When I was still a fence sitter, my ex knew about my thoughts on my career, and he truly seemed to admire it given my background. He and his family were well off, not crazy rich, upper middle class I'd say. His family had problems with his younger brother, a teen at the time. His grades were very low. His parents even paid some teachers to pass him. My ex would get calls at random hours to pick him up at various places, bars, clubs, even in different states, and my ex would always go, and I totally backed him up because I would do the same for mine. When I realized we were for real, about 1 year into the relationship, I told ex-husband about the fact that I was going to be a surrogate for my brother in 10 years or so. He seemed fine, and told me it was fine. He had met my brother by then, and by the time I decided to be child-free I also told him, and he agreed, and even said he was proud of me, and my dedication to my career. 5 years went on, we grew strong. He moved into my rented apartment after I graduated, got a better job in another company, got a master's, got a doctorate. He worked on his career as well, got his own degrees. We both traveled, for fun, and for business. It was a dream. He was a dream. His brother became an entitled person, always pulling his strings to make everyone do as he wished. In fact, they had several family trips which the whole trip plan had to be changed to accommodate his requests, and I was even cut out of some so this or that friend of his could go instead. I kept my thoughts to myself. I wasn't offended or anything. It didn't really matter. We could travel together later. In the meantime, my brother became a lawyer, got a serious boyfriend who's also a lawyer, and later on they got engaged. I was in my mid-20s when it all started to fall apart. My ex invited me to dinner with his parents and his brother. He proposed that night. I was wonderstruck, and said yes. My ex-future mother-in-law was happy as well, but at some point into the dinner they started on about grandchildren. They knew about my choice. I reinforced that. They, even ex-BF, brushed it off lightly. saying I'd change my mind and I'd have to settle down in life, and eventually switch the suit for a dress. I was offended, but way too happy with the engagement to be firm enough at the time. This led to fights, and led to me getting baby clothes as gifts from the in-laws. I stood up for myself every time, which made his family call me names, us never setting a date for the wedding, and his mother embarrassing me in family events. Until ex-husband finally dropped the card I was expecting him to drop, that I would carry a child for my brother, but not for him. I told him many times of how the process would go, and that once the child was out in the world he wouldn't have contact with them. I was gonna be an aunt, not a mother, and that was that. He said he wouldn't be taking care of a pregnant woman that wasn't with his child, and I said I understood, and didn't expect him to, and he wouldn't have to stay with me or pay for anything during the pregnancy. That was all taken care of, and he was aware. He dropped the subject. Months later the company he worked for offered him an 18-month job in another state, and he would be away for the time, and then back at his old job when he came back, and he took it. I had been confiding all this to my brother, and once we got the news about my ex-husband we hurried to see if I could go through the pregnancy during this time. My brother and his husband had 3 adopted kids already, and were eager to complete the family. It was almost close to the time we had previously settled anyways, if a little too earlier, but we could work it out. I told my ex-BF, he got mad, then he threw me out and said I had betrayed him, and went away a week later, never once contacting me. I was in a really bad place, blacked out of social media, and cut contact with his family, but all for the medical procedure was ready by then. My brother said it was okay if I didn't want to do it, but I did. I got pregnant really fast. My mom came to live with me, and help. She was overjoyed. I had never seen her so happy. But she had been sick, and eventually died while I was still pregnant. That hit me like a sledgehammer. The rest of the pregnancy was hard, and I delivered my niece a month later, and although it was hard, she had to be in NICU for a while. She was very healthy. My brother and his husband were with me the entire delivery. They were the first to spend time with her and feed her. I did not had a lot of contact with her or breastfeed, but we 3 agreed she would be named after my mom, which was just so important to me. For the first year, we agreed I wouldn't see my niece often to let her bond with her dads, and I decided to donate my breast milk. I focused on myself, job, body, and mind for that time, and 3 months later I was in better shape than I had ever been in life, and I was feeling myself all over again, and got back to social media. My ex-husband got back, and contacted me and said he wanted to talk, and apologize. I agreed because I still loved him, and he was so sweet to me. We ended up in my apartment. He saw the bottles of labeled breast milk, and hell broke loose. He thought it was impossible for me to have been pregnant with the body I was showing in that short period of time. He thought I hadn't gone through it, and he called me every name under the sun again. And for the second time he left. I was angry. I had had enough. I applied for a lesser position in my job just so I could get away, because I knew I was weak for that man and I needed to get out. So I traveled the world working for the company, and climbing up positions again. By the end of last year the company offered me an executive director's position for an entire division in my home country, in the state I lived for so long, and knew a bunch of people. I took it. And in May I got a call. That man. So many years later, I, like the most stupid person I know, answered the call, and agreed to meet him. We met, and he was different, sad. He told me how he got married, but never forgot me, and how his ex-wife got pregnant with a child that wasn't his, and how he'd been divorced for 2 years, and never dated anyone, thinking of me, and loved me even when I was away, and how he wanted to be with me, no conditions, no kids, on the terms we had always agreed before. I said I needed to think, and he said he would respect my space, and my time, and I appreciated it. A week later I was like, F it. He is the love of my life and I will be with him. I was at work, and so I waited until lunch break to text him to meet me that night. When I was taking my cell phone to text him I saw another text. I recognized his brother's name, and the text went like this. Hey OP. How are you doing? We heard that you and ex-BF are back together, and the family is so happy. Me and my wife are so very happy for you guys too. Long rant about the personal struggles he and his wife were going through. And we are trying to have a child for over a year, and just discovered neither of us can have children, so when we heard you guys were back together we thought you both could be our surrogates, together. Isn't that awesome? He is my brother, you already have experience with it, and we have already discussed everything with ex-BF, and he agreed. You guys will give us the ultimate gift. Let's video chat to settle everything this evening. What do you think? My entire world shattered. I didn't answer. I blocked him, ex-BF, and every possible member of their family that could still reach me. I didn't know what to think. I wanted to cry so bad, but could not in the office, so I went on with my day, and cried myself to sleep like a weak idiot. I didn't tell my brother. He and his husband don't deserve this. They don't need to feel guilty about something they're not, and I just don't have anyone else. The following month the world got quarantined with this pandemic mess, and I'm stuck in my new apartment. I've been getting message requests from accounts I don't know about the matter, and I know it's them. They've switched from anger, to begging, to guilt tripping so many times by now that I'm not sure what to do. I don't think XBF is a part of these messages, but I didn't know what to do anymore. The messages stopped a couple days ago strangely. That brings us to today. My apartment bell rang, but I wasn't expecting anyone. The building doesn't have a doorman because it's all digitally secured. The elevator only opens into the apartments, there's only one per floor, with authorization. And you have to have fingerprint recognition to enter or to authorize anyone in. I looked through my windows, and sure enough there are the 5 of them XBF. Ex-mother-in-law, father-in-law, brother-in-law, and whom I assume is his wife 36 floors down on the street by the building gate. It's been hours, and they keep buzzing me as I write this. How do they know my address? I don't know. How they got here? I don't know. I don't care. They are not getting in. I'm crying. But they won't get to see it. At some point they will give up. I just wished for a second that I could have had that love, you know? Here's an update. 72 hours have passed since the incident of their whole family showing up at my door to try and force me to agree to surrogate for my ex-brother-in-law, and his wife who I don't even know. The issue has been resolved, and here are some answers to questions I received. 1. I don't live in the USA. 2. My brother and his husband live in another state with their family, and that is the reason I can't go stay with them. 3. Here where I live surrogacy cannot be used for profit. The parents can pay for the woman's medical and legal care, but it's against the law to surrogate for money. The woman must do this by free will. It is the least to admit that I was taking the issue with my ex and ex-in-laws way more lightly than I should have when the situation happened, and that I was blinded by my emotions and not thinking with a clear head. Well, upon getting feedback, I got really concerned if I was making the right decisions regarding my integrity and those surrounding me. As many of you suggested, I contacted my brother and his husband, who were both lawyers, and as expected my brother flipped up. I swear I've never seen him curse and yell so much in my entire life. What I didn't expect was for my brother-in-law to get even madder, calling my ex and ex-in-laws monsters and everything else, and saying, and I quote, if they touch a single string of hair of his little sister, they would never see the sun rise again. He is an only child, and we have an amazing relationship. But I never knew I meant so much to him. Then my young nephew came running in with an arrow toy and saying he'd kill the monsters. In that moment I broke down crying on that video call, and was barely able to discuss the matter professionally with them. So we just talked for hours, and we all went to sleep so we could start dealing with it in the morning. The next morning, yesterday, they called me right after breakfast with everything ready, start to a legal trail with the following prosecution. I don't think they slept at all. They had already called a friend lawyer who lives in my state, and specialist in women harassment clauses, and they would work with her as a team. So together we decided to go with my country's version of a cease and desist notification, and upon any tries for contact we were ready to report for cyberbullying. I did also report them to the local authorities for breaking the quarantine, which cannot be used as a personal claim, but can weigh on them legally. In further conversation with them it was noted that I made a good call by ignoring them in every way, and formed to attest that I didn't engage in any of their agreements, and that from now only my lawyers were to be contacted by them. They were also worried any of them would try to reach my niece and claim any relation of hers to them, so they gathered all her paperwork to back up any possible situation that might happen. At last they recommended that I should warn the company and the crew that has direct contact with me of the situation, and say that legal measures are to be taken if any of ex-in-laws or ex try to reach me. In the afternoon I called my superior, who does not live in the country, to inform him of all this. He was appalled, and said that if this could have effects on the company or any of the workers, we should call a board meeting with the executive officers from other states to discuss the situation of my division, and the setup of one of the company lawyers to join my team of lawyers in order to defend the interests of the company. I feel embarrassed to say that this morning I sat through a video conference to explain to a board of men that another man and his family can potentially affect someone in our company, because he wants to force me to get pregnant with him, and then hand the child to his brother and sister-in-law. I was ashamed that this could splash on my workplace and the coworkers I'm responsible for, and this whole thing feels so diminishing. Of course my furious ex-in-laws tried to contact me. Ex-mother-in-law sent about 10 voicemails screaming profanities and saying how unholy I am, and that I had the chance to redeem my sinful decisions in life, and had thrown that to garbage, and all the suffering I've been, and certainly will be through for the rest of my life, is a punishment from God for me being a heathen harlot she had to put up with, and did nothing but love, forgive, and try to guide in God's path. The others contacted with similar messages, but my ex sent me a distraught audio saying he didn't understand how I could be so cruel to him, and his family, especially his little brother, and that he couldn't believe I once said I loved him because all of this was sent directly to the lawyers. My brother and husband called me again after hearing the heartfelt voicemail of my ex-BF, and said they wanted to talk with me. They suggested I speak with the psychoanalyst that accompanied me through the pregnancy years ago, since she knows me, and would know how to help me handle this. I still need to get to her, but I will reach to her by next week, and hopefully we can start doing sessions via video calls. After all this, I want to once again thank all of you that helped me. If it wasn't for you internet strangers, I would probably still be in danger, but with no protection. And now I have apparently 4 lawyers, and I've never felt so loved, and so cared by my family. Even if we're a small one, I'm just happy and grateful to have them in my life. Thank you guys, truly, truly, truly. Subscribe and turn on the notification bell for more stories delivered to you. Thanks for listening. See you later.